Okay, we're now going to look at how to put forms into your web page. But just before we do that, it's getting all a bit messy here, so I'm going to delete all the content there and start again. You might want to create a new file if you want to keep all the content that you've created. It's up to you. So forms are extremely useful things. We can't do much with them at the moment because you really need a server-side language such as PHP to actually process the form or do something with it, or even a bit of JavaScript would do it. But for the moment we'll just learn how to put the forms in, and we'll learn to do something with them later on. So to define a form, use a very simple keyword, form. There are some options for that keyword that are pretty important, but we'll look at those later on. As I say, we're not going to actually get our form to do anything at this stage, so it doesn't really matter. For the moment, we'll just use the form tag to create our form. Now, we are going to create the simplest form type, which is an input. So an input can be several different things, but the standard one is a text input. So we'll say input type is equal to text, like that. So we've got an extra option for this input tag, type is equal to text, and we'll just self-close it there. So for the moment, we'll just see what that looks like. Okay, pretty obvious, pretty standard. You can now put some text in there. Can't do anything with it, but there we go. Just to show you a couple of other options and other things that we can do with that, we can set the value to something if we want. So maybe I want the value to be example. If I refresh that, then that sets the value to example to start with. So it might be that you want to input an email address or something that you've already had stored. So that's the way you can do that. Now, a slightly annoying thing, if you've got a value and you click on it, the value doesn't disappear. So they still have to type, still have to get rid of everything to type something new. There's a handy option called placeholder. So we might want a placeholder called type here, for example. And then not only does it give it in a nice kind of faint font, so it's clearly not already valued there, but when you click inside and start typing, it disappears. So we don't actually need to get the user to delete everything that's already there. Okay, there's a few other types of input that are very similar. So for example, you can put input type is equal to email, and you can use that to automatically validate an email address. So the browser will check to see if it's a valid email before the form is submitted or anything is done with it. There are a couple of other input types, but they're not that important right now. You can read about them in the doc for this course, but if you just want to carry on for the moment, we'll look at those in more detail later on. Okay. So I'm going to put a line break in. In fact, what I'll do is put a couple of line breaks in so that it'll all be nicely separated out. Let's pop a space in there. Okay, so sometimes you're going to want to get the user to type in larger areas of text, and you do that by using the text area tag there. So text area. And then you put your content in again. My content goes here, something like that. And then you close the text area tag. So the text area tag is different to the input tag. It's not self-closing. It's you open it, put your content, and then close it. There we go. So you've got your text area with some content. If you just want to create an empty text area to put some details in, then you just put nothing in between and then it's blank. Great, that's a text area. Let's put another couple of line breaks in to keep everything nicely and separated out. So the third one we're going to look at is a drop-down box. In HTML speak, that's called a select. So we use the select tag. And we're going to close that select tag afterwards, and then each of our options within that are denoted by the option tag. So often the top one is select an option or something that means the same sort of thing, and then maybe we can have three options. 1, 2, and 3. Great. There we go. So I've got a drop-down menu with 3 different options, as well as a select an option instruction at the top. Great. Now, I must say at this point that there's a lot more you can do with these forms, a lot that I'm missing out at this point, just for simplicity's sake. But don't worry about it, it'll all get covered when we look at forms in more detail later on. For the moment, we're just looking at the HTML part to get them onto the screen. Okay, so another type that you might have seen is a what's called a radio option. So we're going to have input type equals radio. It's not going to play any music, unfortunately, but it's going to be a little circle that we click in to select a particular option. So maybe we'll have, if we're talking favorite colors, for example, we might have a red option. Oh, I should close that tag. I'm going to select that again to save you from watching me type, and a green option. Let's have a look at that. Okay, so we've got red, we've got green. Now, usually when we're doing radio inputs, we only want one of them to be selected at once. So we need to have a way of grouping them together so that only one option can be selected at one time. And what we do is we give them a name. So we'll call it color. I'm going to spell it the English way for now, but we'll need to spell it the US way later on. For the moment, it doesn't matter what we call the name, as long as they both have the same name. Then what will happen is you can click one. There we go. If you try and click the other, then they're grouped together and you can only select one of them. Right, so what if you want a similar thing, but one where you can select lots of different ones? That's known as a checkbox. So this time we'll do some animals. And again, I'll copy and paste. We'll have dog, cat, and fish. Okay, there we go. So dog, cat, and fish, and those ones you can select as many as you like. You can deselect as well. Okay, just one more for now, and that is a submit button. Every form needs a submit button to do something with. So let's have our line breaks again, and perhaps unsurprisingly, we do that by having an input with a type of submit. Close that again. Refresh, and there's our button. So it has a submit there. Usually you're going to want to customize the text on that button, and you do that by setting the value of that input. There we go. There we go. And we've changed the value on the text. So you may be wondering what actually happens if we submit this. Click me. On the surface, not that much. But actually, if we stretch this out over here, still a slight difference has been made. We've now got a question mark at the end of this index.html. Now, what's going on there? What we're actually doing is submitting the form. So when we click the submit button, that submits the form. And it submits it using what's known as the get method by default. So that puts all of the variables from the form into a string at the end of the URL. Now, why don't we actually have any values here? That's because I haven't told you yet about the name parameter. So let's, for example, give this top input a name of email, and then save that and refresh. Looks exactly the same, but when we submit, we get an email equals, and it's currently blank because I haven't entered anything in here. But if I put, in fact, test@me.com, and then run that, then you can see we've got test. Now %40 is what's known as a URL encoding. So that's a character code for the @ symbol. And by default, when you submit a form by the get method, everything is converted into character codes so that it doesn't cause problems with the URL. So let's just add a couple of others. We won't do the whole lot. But we can have, so name is equal to, let's just call that text area. And then we'll have a name equals dog. This one has a value as well. So let's say name equals dog, value is equal to 1. So now, if I refresh that and click again, we get email equals something and text area equals something. Notice we don't get dog equals anything until we actually click it, and then we get the dog equals 1. So that's as far as I'll go, partly because that's all the room I've got in that box, but you get the idea. So once you put name attributes on all of your form items, that means you can submit them. Now, until we know a bit of JavaScript and ideally a bit of PHP, we can't really do much with what's submitted because we can't have any interactivity in our apps yet. But don't worry about that, we'll reach it when we get there. So that's a quick primer for you on HTML forms.